very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, as we set the stage for this insightful conversation. We've already heard a number of responses from the audience members, of course, to warm up for what lies ahead. It's a very interesting moment that we are standing at today. I just want to, first of all, delve deeper into this label that India has, known as the pharmacy of the world. Very heavy words, a lot of recognition that India's pharmaceutical industry has achieved. Dr. Singh, if I can start off with your comments on just helping us better understand how rare this combination is that India's pharmaceutical industry really offers in terms of the assured quality and the affordable pricing. Of course, the role that it has played when it comes to the vaccine supply and really championing that cause when it comes to increasing healthcare access as well.
So to your question of how did we arrive at this point?
Yes.
The point of arrival actually comes and stems from 2 points. Number one is the cost of manufacturing, right? And India definitely has an edge and an advantage that the cost of labor, as well as a very, very important part, and that is India excels in reverse engineering, right? We excel in reverse engineering, and also we are able to customize processes very fast. The Achilles heel in this is a mindset of jugaad, and I'll come back to that later.
Jugaad is a very important word here in the Indian ecosystem.
Absolutely. So we have been driven typically by volumes, right? We are able to, in a very short time, bring the volumes to the market at the price point at which the market is ready to absorb it.
Right.
Right? So that immediately pushes you up. So you're able to bring the volume and you're able to give it at the price point. The stickiness comes when it comes to quality. Like everything in life, there will always be outliers. There are always outliers. And unfortunately, what happens when you look at the volumes that you're dealing with, the number of outliers also proportionately go high. So it comes straight into your face that, no, this is not right. Having said that, because you have the volume advantage and you have the price advantage, you have a place in the global stage. I hope that answers your question.
Of course, indeed. And it also helps us better understand how challenging this achievement really has been, because becoming the world's largest supplier of generic medicines, accounting for 20% of the global supply, is no ordinary feat. And of course, it's taken a lot to be able to achieve that. Dr. Reddy, if I can also ask for your comments exactly on the point that Dr. Singh just made, when it comes to the way India has actually been able to tap into its potential, capitalize on its strengths, and also understand the needs of the world, really.
I think the revolution actually began when we moved from product patenting to process patenting.
Right.
That gave us an opportunity to produce a very large number of medicines at low cost. And that satisfied not only our national needs, but then it allowed us to address the needs of many countries across the world at relatively low expense of production and export. And many markets, not just in the low and middle income countries, but even in the more advanced economies of the world, started realizing that generic drugs, which are quality assured, are likely to greatly reduce the healthcare costs in their countries. And that has really given India the label of the pharmacy of the world. Now, of course, there are a lot of new innovations that need to be made. We also need to proceed to innovating new formulations now, not just do reverse engineering. And we are on the way for that as well. I mean, we've just unveiled a new antibiotic, Xenic. Yes. So the idea of, which has received WHO recognition.
Yes.
So I think we now have to begin the next part of the journey consolidating what we have already accomplished, ensuring that we continue to serve the needs of the world while addressing India's prioritized needs, and thereby actually continue to be the global pharmacy with the best of intent and best of performance as well.
Dr. Alonso, I have to get you in here because, you know, a lot of your work extensively talks about this intersection between medical standards and global innovation, which is increasingly important in today's context. And touching upon what Dr. Reddy just mentioned as well, India's role when it comes to also ensuring that public healthcare access is bridged to the extent that it has already done. Your comments first on how you see India's position on that front.
So I see India has a lot of advantages in comparison with other countries because of its expertise and its leadership and also its potential to scale. And I do think that we have to look back to the pandemic. I know everyone talks about the pandemic, but I think we have to reflect because I think the world became aware that we have dependency on the manufacturing centers. And I feel very proud and very honored to be living in India and be part of this ecosystem because people think that people in Western countries tend to think, oh, Europeans are coming to India, or Westerns are coming to India to solve India's problem. And I always say, no, I'm coming to India to learn and to see what I can take to Western countries from India. But living here and seeing India's great potential, there's only one thing that scares me, which is what if we have another pandemic or another similar situation and India struggles? The workforce can struggle. There was an Africa-India summit happening some time back, which was cancelled because of the outbreak in Africa. But I was wondering, what if that was not cancelled, or if that happened couple days after, and India suffered, and the population suffered, and those manufacturing centers, because the workforce became affected, could not manufacture and deliver to the world. The world would see a bottleneck. So I think that in this respect, India should lead, and maybe from a very naive point of view, establish kind of embassies and consulates from India manufacturing centers across the globe so that we can ensure, as Dr. Reddy was saying, that those processes that that India has innovated in can be replicated in other countries following India's leadership to ensure that in case something happened, we can still ensure the provisions or the supplies of medicines that the world actually needs because we're fully dependent on India.
And that, of course, also stresses on the important role that India has on the global stage. But, of course, the vulnerabilities when we speak of each and every corner of the world is vulnerable. And that, of course, brings us to the immediate concern of how prepared the world really is for a pandemic. We will come to that because, like you rightly mentioned, it's very important to look back at the COVID-19 pandemic and what it really has taught the world at large. But coming back to what we were discussing at the outset, the challenges in bridging the gap, Dr. Singh, when it comes to healthcare access, India's push on that front has been multi-pronged through its initiatives, through its various incentive-based schemes as well. If you can just set the stage for some of us in the audience as well who might not be very well apprised with what India has really done on that front.
Right. So the challenge of healthcare access is not unique to India.
Exactly.
Let me be very honest and upfront about this. 50% of the world does not have access to healthcare,
yes.
Right? The second part is that we have this notion primarily because our health system, and Sir is here far better equipped to this, from the formation of our Boer Committee in 1942 onwards, the principles of providing care at the primary level, which was emphasized, re-emphasized, unfortunately did not happen, right? And it fell off the wayside. While other countries, and well, they are called as the high economic countries, they focused on primary care. And the tertiary and the quaternary care followed. We simultaneously embarked upon trying to address the primary health care and pushed it down in our federated system to the states, right? So the states were responsible to take care of the primary health care, and the central piece would make the education, the quaternary, the tertiary, etc., etc. So this kind of duality, that is, trying to make sure that the primary works at the same time the tertiary works, kind of brought in that divide of progress on both points. So primary lagged behind, and the tertiary one moved forward. Then around the 90s, right, with the advent of Apollo hospitals in its true form of corporate health care started coming in because the need was so high, you know, and the innovation worldwide, and people did get to know that medicine has moved far beyond others, and there was a lot of what you call brain drain from India going, right? And so our doctors went overseas and would operate on our people who had access to go there. And then the question was, why can't we do it? So then the private sector started hurtling around, right? And that continued moving. So here was this great mishmash. Primary not taken care of, private sector coming into the quaternary, tertiary, and the population increasing. And customer or users, all of us are users, including me, our aspirations also started moving. And let's not forget, you will get a service only if the customer demands it, right? Having said that, Apple is a fantastic example of how you change behavior by bringing a product. But those are far and few in between. And this is very personal. So this mishmash of primary stuck, tertiary moving on its own space, has resulted into where we are. And that is, 2/3 of the country doesn't have true access to good primary care. You know? And it's something that if we do not address, how we are going to address it, if you'd like me to spend a minute and share it with you as to what the change in thought process is, that look, given the population that we have, until people don't answer like you did in the Q&A, right? By being informed, reading, and your own sense of curiosity, how you manage your own lives, we will never be able to address primary health care. i.e., preventive health care is something we have to start investing in now. Personally, I have to be responsible for my health. And thereby, I should be taught how to look after myself. And so now, whether it's schools, colleges, corporate world, employers, everybody's getting into the bandwagon of making sure after COVID that you know how to take care of your life. So that is the needle which is going to start changing this paradigm instead of waiting for governments, and primary care is never very attractive to the private sector, to change this thing. I'll stop here.
Right, no, of course, and you know, Jaan hai to jahan hai, health as well. We've grown up listening to these phrases, of course, but the need to also increase awareness, like you're saying, and take these issues a lot more seriously. I think the pandemic, again, was a major reminder for us to do that. Dr. Reddy, you know, we have to also touch upon the way in which India has somewhat been relying on global supplies for APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, for example. What are the ways in which India can counter that challenge going forward?
I think COVID brought us the lesson home that we need to be self-reliant, even as we engage with the rest of the world and try and assist global efforts. We cannot fully depend on global supply chains or on global altruism. Now, we saw what has happened to globalization. Globalization came in with evangelical fervor from Western economies, and we had this great statement that the world is flat. Yeah, but even a flat surface can be inclined. It can be tilted in favor of the Western economies, and that's what happened. The moment emerging economies started developing muscle and started growing their economies, then the Western economies started fearing the new entrants, and globalization sort of went off the table. This tidal wave of tariffs and abandonment of Western aid programs merely represents the slash and burn retreat of global capitalism from globalization. Now, that doesn't mean that the world has to be fragmented. It has to be united in its efforts.
An issue like health.
In health, pandemic preparedness, climate change, as you rightly pointed out. However, it's absolutely important that we also develop self-reliance, and in an area like APIs, which you mentioned, where our pharmaceutical industry has to develop medicines at volume and at low cost and with speed for the domestic as well as the international market, we cannot be held hostage by restricted or undependable supply of APIs from China or other countries. We have to develop our capacity for developing APIs within our own country, so that at any given time, if the global supply chains sort of break down, whether for epidemic reasons, pandemic reasons, or political reasons, or whatever, we ought to be able to stand on our 2 feet and produce drugs needed for this country and supply other parts of the world which are also needing it. So I think we should, right from the very beginning of the production chain to the end of it, we should do it. And when I say production chain, I also mean that we should develop the scientific capacity for innovating new medicines all across the line. We cannot depend only on Western knowledge for that. I think we should now move into the next stage of our development from a strong production capacity to a strong innovation capacity as well. We ought to innovate with a lot of new drugs coming in, and we have the capacity to do that. We should be able to do that through academia-industry partnerships, a greater amount of money being put in both by the public and private sector into supporting innovation of new drugs, and possibly advanced market commitments for new drugs that are being developed. There are many things that we ought to do so that we can actually push in innovative new drugs as well. Otherwise, we are going to be left standing behind the global markets.
And speaking of that, what does the world need to do when it comes to bridging the healthcare gaps? Dr. Alonso, you've been working extensively in that regard to bridge some of those gaps. What are the challenges that you've encountered? So what would you say are the immediate priorities when it comes to dealing with that?
So I think the most immediate priority as a user, and reflecting on what both Dr. Reddy and Dr. Singh have you said, for me comes to accessibility. And
billions around the world do not have access to healthcare.
Exactly. But I think thinking locally, even in India, and maybe what I'm going to share is not politically correct to say, but it's a personal example, and I just like sharing on personal experiences. Last month, I wanted to get the dengue vaccine, and I went to an EU embassy, and I got it. But my best friends are Indians. And what I wonder is how easily accessible is the dengue vaccine for them today? And I know this is on the news now, it's going to become easily accessible probably sometime soon. But as of today, it is not. So that makes me reflect how unfair is the situation.
You know, when you speak of that, I can't help but also touch upon this term, which is highly debated, which is medical imperialism, health imperialism. We also touched upon that briefly before the session started. So that, of course, is a term that needs to also be understood and of course, dealt with, and it's an ongoing fight when it comes to the kind of gaps on multiple fronts. If I can just get in your perspectives, Dr. Alonso and Dr. Singh, on that as well.
So, like Dr. Reddy was saying, the world people don't think the world is flat anymore. We try to establish boundaries and fields and put limitations. And I think because India has the manufacturing capacity, has the innovation capacity, and is also developing one of the strongest digital health policies, I think that should be in our agenda, that we should address how to make this accessible and also patient education, public education in healthcare to everyone. And we were seeing at the initial remarks, we all have social media profiles, and there's this reel going on across all the profiles. Why are doctors becoming influencers? And it's because influencers are trying to play doctors with sharing advice, which is not really useful. And I think India sits at a very advantaged platform because of the digital strength, the manufacturing strengths, and the medical capacities.
Dr. Singh.
So the word imperialism is protectionism, you know. So it's in your DNA. Every sphere, whether you're a mammal or a human being, everybody is protectionist. Right? This is my turf. Having said that, there are dependencies. If nothing else, COVID taught us about the huge amount of dependencies. Everything that we've spoken about, whether it's logistics chains. As far as healthcare is concerned, there's not a single product, whichever way you skin it, which will remain in the hands of a particular person or a country, right? So a mechanism has to be formed whereby, and this is what, I was the secretariat for the G20 summit, and we headed the B20, and one of the parts that was taken up was precisely this, that how do you get out for COVID, because COVID experience was very new that time. How do you get out of this that everybody has equitable access to medicines as well as to vaccines? And what is in the methodology in which innovation, as Dr. Reddy said, how do you make sure that everybody is part and parcel about the innovation? Because the R&D spend for a drug is so very high that that protectionism or imperialism becomes even more strong, right? I've spent so much of money, therefore this is my product and I will keep it to me, which then feeds into the patency laws, global patency laws, not only Indian. This has not moved. They're still on the drawing board of who is going to contribute what to ensure that there is a level playing field. So it's a long way happening. It is going to be there. It's very much in our interest to walk the mile with the CDRMOs and the CDMOs and make sure there's self-reliance in our country on the innovation, biosimilars, and onco drugs. It's critical.
Indeed, Dr. Reddy has been wanting to come in. Please go ahead.
Well, just to exemplify what has been said,
Yeah.
look at what's happening to the pandemic treaty.
Yeah.
After the horrific experience that the world has had with COVID, it was resolved at the level of the United Nations and the WHO that we should have a pandemic treaty so that there can be a concerted, consolidated, coordinated response to any future pandemic, from prevention to preparation and response.
Right.
The pandemic treaty was supposed to have been concluded in May last year, 2025. It is still being debated. Part of it has been approved, but two critical elements are holding back the negotiations and final adoption of the full treaty. One is pathogen sharing, and second is benefit sharing. The Western nations want access to the pathogens unrestricted whenever they're discovered in any country, Africa, India, or wherever, but they don't want to give assurance of benefit sharing for vaccines, drugs, and technologies. There, they want to assert their patent rights.
Right.
Now, this is a tragedy that we are seeing now, which is holding back the entire treaty, and the United States, having exited the WHO, exited the pandemic treaty, is now negotiating independent bilateral agreements with African countries and some Asian countries for providing aid, including for the AIDS programs, on the condition that they will do pathogen sharing unconditionally. So in a sense, this is, the word imperialism was being mentioned. This is imperialism. Now, if we cannot resist this as a global community, then we are going to continue to see fragmentation, irrespective of all the platitudes that we spout about one world, that no one is safe till everyone is safe. Yeah. We have to bring that spirit of solidarity back.
And like we say, world is one, WION World is one, is what we stand for as well. And like you're rightly mentioning, you know, an issue as sensitive and crucial as health is all the more a need for the world to stand united. We are talking about the challenges. Let's also take a moment to look at the opportunities that lie ahead. And Dr. Singh, I have to come to you to talk about, you know, this aspect of medical value travel, which of course is a key element of how India engages with the world. Some very interesting numbers here. The medical tourism market, around $8.7 billion US dollars in 2025, projections of $16.2 billion US dollars by 2030. Of course, India's clinical excellence, its patient-centric approach have been major factors in establishing itself as a major global destination for medical tourism. Your comments on how this can be capitalized further, what would the immediate priority be according to you?
So yes, the opportunity is huge. Are we working on it as a nation, as a country, even from the government's perspective? Yes. There are very ambitious plans of having what we call medical value travel hubs across the country. But again, it all comes down to a place where there are critical elements in which the bilateral part of it has to be sorted out in a very concerted manner. And I'll give you examples. Insurances, people who are insured for treatment in their host country where they are born, those insurances will not cover it for MVT. So that automatically restricts the movement of the individuals. That's point number one. Point number two, transnational legalities have to be sorted out. Right? So if you have a case that has gone bad, now which country, which sovereign country will take up that medical legal case? You know, these, if you have to go up that value chain, otherwise you'll be doing the small, low-hanging fruit stuff. Then the third bit is that once an individual gets a surgery done, goes back to their parent country, we have to forge a proper alliance with clinicians as well as hospitals on the other end to take care of the patient exactly like the patient would have been taken care of by us. Right. So the continuum of care has to be embedded in this MVT story. Once we are able to tick these reasonably, then we can definitely actualize the numbers that you said.
Very interesting. Dr. Reddy, closing remarks from you, please. We're completely running out of time. I would love to go on. But if I can just ask you to comment on that and just share your thoughts.
Well, we do need to ensure that our health system has the capacity to deliver for the entire country, meeting our own needs first. At the same time, extend facilities for those who want to take advantage of India's skills and economic affordability to access healthcare here. So I think we ought to really strengthen our health systems tremendously in order to meet both domestic and international demand. But in that, I would like to make one parting comment.
Sure.
The whole world is short of health workers. The WHO says till 2030, the world will be short of 11 million health workers. India too will require many more health workers. If we really want to invoke the spirit of global solidarity, we need co-investments in production of health workers so that particularly countries which have young demographic profile like South Asia, India in particular, and Africa, which have young people who can be trained and can be available for the global market. For that, the whole world will have to co-invest.
Right.
That's an important element that we need to address.
Very well summarized. I would say, Dr. Reddy, Dr. Alonso, Dr. Singh, thank you very much for being here, your insightful comments, perspectives, and really taking this conversation forward and the need to have more of such conversations. Thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I please request Molly to felicitate our guests?